sidewalk construction on 5th and 15th and 155th. That's going to continue, but we also are really close to getting started on improvements at the 145th Street interchange. And that's going to be a really big project, and that's going to have a lot of impacts over the next several years. I think the city says that the expectation is that the 145th interchange is to be finished by September of 2025. So there will be detours around 145th, but from what we've learned on council, that the 145th, there will always be at least one lane open in each direction, or for most of the time, there'll be one lane open on 145th. But if you have to cross, go east-west, I recommend going on 155th. There will be a 24/7 hotline available for people to call with issues on the project. If you remember, we had a similar hotline around the Aurora Corridor project. And again, you're going to find more information about the 145th project on the city's new community engagement platform, Engage Shoreline. And you can find that at our website, engage.shorelinewa.gov. Other big news is we just got $1 million from the Forest Service to enhance our urban forestry efforts. So now we have about $3.76 million for urban forestry, for our urban forestry program. And that's going to really help track our urban health, or the health of our urban forest, our tree canopy, and expand opportunities for the community to plant and maintain trees on private property. So I'd rather listen to your questions and be able to answer your questions than talk about all the things that will be in currents in about a month or 2 months. So please give me the hard questions. Constance, I don't know if you're going to be sort of facilitating that.
I certainly can. Who in this group has questions before we get to our chat folks?
And I'm going to need a mic for people speaking.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so my question is about you. We are entering crazy political season. I don't know if you are running for your seat, but I'm really impressed by the Shoreline City Council as a whole. And I'm just curious as to why you decided to get engaged with this.
Sure. Fortunately, I am not up for re-election this year. I was re-elected 2 years ago. We have 3 members of the council who are on the ballot and who are running for re-election. That's Councilmember and Mayor Keith Scully, Councilmember Doris McConnell, and Councilmember and Deputy Mayor Betsy Robertson. So all 3 of them are, those positions are on the ballot this year. I got engaged because I believe in government. I worked in the Oregon legislature for a couple sessions before moving up to Washington, and found that just I really wanted to serve the community, and I do really enjoy serving the community. I enjoy serving the community so much that I'm engaged in both the at the regional level as vice chair of the Sound Cities Association Public Issues Committee, the Puget Sound Regional Council Executive Board. I'm on the AWC, chair of the Association of Washington Cities Federal Legislative Committee, and I'm on the board of the National League of Cities Executive Board. So I think that working on these committees and really, we're able to bring a lot of attention and focus to issues that within the city of Shoreline. And I'll look to other questions. I will say that it has been a pleasure serving with on the last with these this council and previous councils. I think we work well together, and I think that is seen by the great staff and great city manager that we have.
Okay, now this is a city related question. How are you doing with the city's comp plan, and what kinds of work are you investing into that?
Sure, we are about a year away from adoption of the comp plan, which is our 6-year plan, 6-year comprehensive plan, or usually 6-year comprehensive plan. We are close to adopting our comprehensive plan, our parks, recreation, cultural services, and arts plan, our PROSA plan. That I think it's being finalized through the Parks Board now and should be coming to us. This is one of several plans that the city will adopt as part of our comprehensive plan. I think the meat of the work in terms of land use is going to be done late this year and definitely early next year, in terms of that's going to go through the Planning Commission first and then come to the City Council. And I think the plan is for adoption most likely fourth quarter of next year.
Bill Dwyer, Barcrest neighborhood. So you're working on the comprehensive plan currently, but what I would like to know is, what is your vision of what Shoreline will look like in 10 years?
Well, I'll first point to the vision 2029 that the city adopted several years ago, and I think that really stands as our guiding principle, where we have walkable neighborhoods, especially around Aurora, and now with the adoption, we'll have next year 2 light rail stations. We're looking for walkable, inclusive neighborhoods around those light rail stations as well. The legislature has said that we're going to have and must allow for duplexes and triplexes and other so-called missing middle housing in our city. And I think we're going to work over the course of this year to determine exactly where those, how that is going to be implemented in the city. If I can go on more, but I think that I would still just go back to the Vision 2029 document that really still guides what our vision is as a council.
Any other questions on the floor? You can ask a second one if you would like.
I see lots of people who I know have questions, both
I know.
online.
Online folks, please go
I
ahead.
don't want to call people out.
It's your prerogative. You can if you'd like.
Because I know Dan always has good questions when I talk with him. I see Pam always has good questions when she comes to council. I don't have the list of everyone in the room, so.
Very quiet group tonight.
Are you gonna let me off easy again?
Too easy, I think. Well, okay, last call. See if anybody out in Zoom land has a question for Councilmember Roberts.
I will say, I mean, if no one wants to ask a question today, I mean, all of us, and especially me, are available to, we're happy to meet with people. We're happy to talk to people on the phone. We're happy to answer questions over email. So please do reach out to us. We want to hear from you. We want to hear from you on these issues, whether it's about your vision for our city in our comprehensive plan, what we should do about protecting trees. We want to hear from you on all of these issues, and we appreciate the comments of the public as we go through, deliberate, and work together to build a community that we all believe in. And I saw Pam had a comment in the chat, but I was wondering if that was.
She's having some computer issues, so she may. Pam, if you have a question. Okay. You can unmute yourself as well and ask if you would like, if anybody would rather do that than type. All right. Well, this is just more time for Chief Cowan and Michelle Pittock to tell us about the fire department, and you are more than welcome to stay, Councilmember Roberts.
Thank you, but I need to run off. I am pretty tired.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, and I hope to see everyone really soon.
Thanks. Please do, yeah.
She doesn't like me, so she took off. So before I'm going to talk about the fire department, and I really want to hear from you guys if you have any questions for me. Believe it or not, actually, this is one of the better parts of my job, is to actually speak with you all and get to have face-to-face conversations. A lot of times I end up in an office and looking at a screen most of the day. So we were talking about, what to talk about tonight, and I asked for the permission and to share a little bit about who I am, because I serve you. I am your fire chief. And so I think it's important that you know a little bit about me, and you can even ask questions about me if you'd like. But so here you go. I grew up in the San Juan Islands on a farm on Lopez, and small community, and went from there to University of Puget Sound in Tacoma. And believe it or not, I studied physics with minors in math and economics. But before I got to school at UPS, I kind of got the bug for firefighting, and it was set for me when I was actually playing golf. I was playing on our golf team. We were practicing, and a small plane, Cessna, crashed on the hole that we were playing, and we had teed off, and the plane crashed, and I ran up and didn't know what to do. I'd had, the physical health class way back in the day. It feels like prehistoric days, and didn't know how to help these two people that were severely injured. And the people I was playing with, they were all like, "We'll go get help. I'm going to go beat him to go get help." And I was left, pretty much alone with this airplane. And if you guys remember chips back in the day, everything exploded in fire. So I figured this thing was going to catch on fire, and this and that, didn't know what to do. And that kind of gave me the bug for, pursuing something. How was I going to serve? How was I going to, know what to do the next time? And so when I got a little bit older, I started volunteering. And then, when I went to school at UPS, even in the summers, I was still volunteering as a firefighter. Didn't think about it as a career path until after I graduated. And I was on a call, and I thought it was the most ridiculous call at the time. But that can be a standard that changes all the time. And I was like, oh, this is a really cool thing to do at 3 o'clock in the morning in a downpour rain. Back then they had open cab fire engines, and we were going to a possible illegal burn. In our world, that's just, usually it's a nothing call. And I was like, man, I'm falling asleep and it's raining, and I still really love this. And I was really blessed to fall into this as a career. So I ended up applying for and got hired down Southeast King County in Maple Valley area, and was served there for 21 years. I moved up through the ranks. I graduated with physics, but I went back and got an AA degree in fire command administration, because that's more appropriate for firefighting. Then went on and got my master's degree in public administration. Went to a 4-year certification program at the National Fire Academy in Maryland. Got certified as an executive fire officer through that program. I'm also internationally recognized as a fire chief. Actually, just yesterday got reconfirmed as an international fire chief officer. And I've got a couple other certifications and all that, as I was going up through the ranks, and thought that I'd probably stay in Maple Valley until the opportunity came up in Shoreline. And that was about 10 and a half years ago. So been doing this I'm in my 32nd year, about 37 if you include all the volunteer time and so forth. So when I got exposed, or shouldn't exposed, when I was told about this opportunity at Shoreline, yeah, it was kind of funny because my commissioner down in Maple Valley was actually the president of our union here. And so we swapped roles, and he was really excited about me coming up. And actually, I was, again, really blessed that I was able to come up here because it's been a great opportunity for me. And so I've been here for about 10 and a half years and seen some of the changes that are coming. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about where we're going as a department in the future. But again, I thought it was important that you guys know a little bit about me. And if you ever want to ask more questions or grill me about golf or physics or whatever, please, do so. And again, I really enjoy what we're doing here tonight so that I can be able to answer any questions that you may have. So can we start the slideshow? I think I'll sit down for this part. Okay, so make sure the clicker's working, and there we go.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk a little bit. It's really great to be able to have Michelle here. Michelle Pittick is our PIO, which is Public Information and Education Officer. And so she can talk a lot about what outreach we're doing and all that. But I thought I'd start with telling you guys a little bit about what the fire department and how we are structured and all that. So you gotta go to the next slide. So one of the things I get a question about a lot is, they talk about, we're the Shoreline Fire Department, but they don't associate us as a separate entity. And there's different fire departments out there. In this map, it's an older map, but it shows the different fire districts, and you can see the yellow areas. It's kind of hard because it's pretty small, but the yellow areas around Seattle, Bellevue, and so forth, those are municipal fire departments. And there's a big difference between the two of them. We're a fire district. We're the Shoreline Fire District, but we are separate from the city. And so we have our own taxing authority, our own governing board, and so forth. We have a great relationship with the city, but we're not a division of the city. And so municipal fire departments are a division of the city. They battle, similar to the sheriff's department. And so when we set budgets and so forth with the municipal departments with the city, they set it with the city. I answer to a board of commissioners, and we're actually right in it today. I spent 7.5 hours working on the budget today. So we're in budget season to set the budget for next year. But, essentially we have the autonomy to set not only our budgets, but what our levels of service are and everything. And it's a lot more work to be a fire district because we don't have the support of the city, for finance or HR or facilities or any of those other things. But at the same time, we have a lot more control over what's going on. So I want to explain that because there's two major differences in the different departments out there. And I get a lot of questions about, well, why don't you just go to the city and ask for help? And I'm like, oh, I wish I could, but I can't, and vice versa. They look at us and we're as part of the city. So I'd like to start there. And if you have any questions, I'd love to have questions. So if you want to interrupt me, totally fine. At the end too, we're expecting to have time for questions and answers as well. So this is a rough map of our different stations that we have around Shoreline, and it has response rings. You'll see those in colors. Sorry, I have to talk really softly. It has different response areas or colors to show how we respond in different areas. Last June, we ended up going into a contract, an ILA, interlocal agreement, with the North Shore Fire Department, which serves Lake Forest Park and Kenmore. And we're under contract with them starting last June. And we are now operating as one fire department. All their employees came over. And while they're still two separate, technically, fire departments, we operate as one. So that's why you'll see the three stations that we have staffed here in Shoreline, 64. Does it have a pointer? I'm sure this has a pointer. Is it that one? No. Which is the pointer? Oh, okay. Oh, there we go. So this is station 64, 65, and 63. Those are our staff stations here in Shoreline. But now we also have a station 57 in Lake Forest Park and a station 51 in Kenmore. There's actually another station kind of here, a very old station that's not really functional, but we're actually looking to the future to see what we're going to do there. But this whole area is served by the Shoreline Fire Department, including the town of Woodway, again, under contract. And so, you know, I wanted to show this because that's how our fire stations are spread out. We have 5 stations serving about 100,000 people in those cities and those communities. And then we also have, in addition to that, we have units, medic units, which I'll talk about in a little bit here, but we have medic units that are outside of this area. It used to be that we had the North Shore Fire Department, we had a medic unit in one of those stations, and that was a separate fire department, but we also have another station or another unit, it's not on this map. It's in Bothell at Station 42. And that is a much bigger area that we serve, and it's about 250,000 people that are protected by the medic units. So the great thing that we have here at Shoreline is not only the stations, the way they're staffed and all that, but because we're in a smaller geographical area, we have really very good response times and a very high level of performance that we're able to provide. And that's because we have located the stations where they're at. If you may be, you know, aware of our new fire station in North City, Station 63. Believe it or not, way back in the day when they built that station, they had the foresight to almost locate it perfectly for us. So when we rebuilt the station, we rebuilt it on the same site. So the performance we have is showed computer generated on those colors. And you'll see that even the areas that are further out are still actually very well protected and responded to. Most fire departments do not have this kind of response, you know, area and performance. This is a little bit more of a detailed, more specific to the different stations, you know, and color coded. And you can see the Station 54 there in South Kenmore. This is our organizational structure or our chart. We have about 190 personnel in the fire department total in the fire department now in different divisions. Again, it's kind of hard to see because it's smaller, but we basically we serve both the, as I mentioned, we have the North Shore Board of Commissioners and the Shoreline Board of Commissioners overseeing me and the rest of the department. And you can see the different divisions in the orange. Point to them again. The different divisions, the administrative division, operations, and support services, and then the flow down to all the different positions that, you know, underneath that. And so we have 190 people spread out through these different divisions. And I'm going to show you how we're staffing stations and units here in a second. But one thing I wanted to bring up, because it's a great source of efficiency and interoperability, is over here. This is our training consortium. And it's kind of like a training division. We used to have a training division, but now it's a consortium, and it bridges across different jurisdictions. It used to include the legacy North Shore Fire Department and Woodinville Fire Departments, but because of mergers and so forth and the contract with North Shore, it's now, and Bothell, sorry. And now we just have a partnership with Bothell. So we're training all together and under this consortium, which jointly staffs with officers from both the Bothell and Shoreline Fire Department. And we, that training consortium is based out of Kenmore at Station 51. I keep going fast. Do you have any questions before I keep moving to another slide? Sure.
Is administrative, or does that also include? No. And sorry, I forgot my protocol. I'm Mary Ann Grafton. I live in Shoreline. So the number you quoted for employees, is that administrative only, or does that include first responders? So that's everybody?
That's everybody.
Wow.
So 190 personnel, and actually I'll go to the next slide. I think it's the next slide here. Yeah, so this is how we staff at different staffing levels. This is just the suppression side, and I'll talk about the difference between the suppression and ALS side. But so down here at the bottom, you'll see these numbers, 24 up to 31. At different staffing levels, these are the different units that we staff up on a daily basis. And this is just the suppression side, not ALS. I'll talk about that in a second too, but so, and we typically are in that 26. This is our established minimum level during the day. So we're typically staffing all of these units. It's not there. All these units on a daily basis. When when we have extra people on, we get to staff more units. But on a given day, we have probably around 33 personnel on duty, staffing both the suppression and our medic units. So one of the things I'm really proud of, because it's a real struggle in our industry right now, is that we are actually at our target. We all have different targets of what we want to staff at, because it's not like if people don't show up that we can just drop rigs. We don't like, well, we can, but we don't like doing that because that decreases our level of service. So we set minimum staffing levels and we hire overtime to fill to those positions and even force people on mandatory overtime to stay to maintain that level of service. So we try to hit our target staffing levels so that there is it's a delicate balance between staffing and overtime and how much we spend on overtime. If we spend way too much money on overtime, I'd rather put that money into more staffing so that we're not, spending a lot of overtime. But there's a balance there in staffing versus overtime. And so when I talk about 26 on the suppression side, 33 total with the ALS, that is to maintain what we consider our minimum level of staffing. To maintain that and keep that level without spending too much overtime, we're in the neighborhood of around 112 assigned firefighters on the suppression side. And I'm really and to go back to what I was talking about, I'm really happy that we're actually at our target or close to it. We're within a few right now, because we've really struggled with attrition, with COVID, with everything else that's going on, to be able to maintain that level and get to that level. It took a lot of effort, and Michelle can attest to this. We have a lot of younger firefighters in our in the fire department right now because we had this big wave. There's other departments that are still struggling to get back to their target, but I'm really happy and proud that we've been able to get back to our targets. Now we can just focus on, maintaining that level through, for people that are retiring and so forth. So it's a great question of how many people are actually on the street versus, the total number of people in the department. But please recognize too, that it takes a lot of people to support what's going on the street. And that is our mission. It does not matter. It does not matter if I leave tomorrow. I don't plan on it. I mean, the board could say something differently. I do have a board meeting tomorrow night. So, but if I go away tomorrow, if Michelle goes away tomorrow, hopefully what doesn't get impacted is the performance at the street level, because that's the biggest impact on how we serve you. And so that's what we focus on with our minimum staffing levels. Does that make sense? I can keep on going. Yeah, on this. Sure.
Is suppression, I assume suppression means actually fighting fires. Is that correct?
It's a great question. And please, if I am full of acronyms, and so thank you. So we separate out, I'll go back. So right here in our operations, our deputy chief, it goes down to our division chief of EMS and our division chief of suppression training, down to our battalion chiefs, company officers, and firefighters. And on this side, we go to what's called medical services officers and paramedics. When I talk about suppression, I'm talking about all of our personnel are qualified to fight fires. However, myself, Michelle, I used to be, you still are, an EMT, a basic. So that's the basic level of firefighting to provide the medical, treatment, on EMS calls, emergency medical service calls. And so when I talk about suppression, that's the firefighter side. And then the ALS side is the paramedics. They are higher level, trained on the EMS side. It takes about 1.5 years to get all the way through the paramedic school. We have 6 in paramedic school right now in Harborview. We won't see them again until mid-August or so of next year. And they're specialized units. There's only 3 of those units across all of North King County. Those are the units I was talking about: Shoreline, Lake Forest Park, and Bothell, serving about 250,000 all of North King County, serving all the way out through downtown Woodinville, northern Kirkland-ish, county line, Seattle, and so forth. So when I talk about suppression, I'm talking about our firefighters, and we just call them firefighter EMTs. And then on the paramedic side, we call those the firefighter paramedics. So they all can fight fire, but they have different levels of EMS training and experience. And one of the big challenges we have, and the reason why we have to have 2 completely separate divisions on this, is that you all have voted on, well, you had the opportunity to vote on a King County EMS levy, and that supports us not only with the EMTs at a basic level, but it fully supports the ALS program, the paramedic program, which is a countywide EMS levy. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. There's another acronym. Sorry, another acronym. Advanced life service. What's that? I'm sorry. So the question was, what does ALS stand for? And that's for Advanced Life Services. So it's the difference between VLS, basic life services, and ALS, advanced life services. That's the difference between EMTs and paramedics. That's a great question. Again, I'm full of acronyms and I blur right through them. So sorry. So please call me out on them. So we, the King County wide EMS levy, in fact, is coming up again for reauthorization next year. Keith Scully is hopefully going to represent the city of Shoreline in that effort. The funding from that EMS levy fully funds the ALS side of what we do. So I have to completely separate our budgets, and it's complicated, but it's a great program for us to have. It really improves not only the level of service that we provide to Shoreline, but it also elevates, even our basic life service, our EMTs, to be even better than they are than other fire departments. There are 3 programs in what we call Zone 1, which is north of I-90 outside of Seattle. We have an ALS program, a paramedic program. Redmond has a program, and Bellevue has a program. Seattle has a program, and then all of South King County has a program under the county. You will see Medic 1, and then you'll see Shoreline Medic 1, Bellevue Medic 1, Northeast Medic 1, and then South King County is just Medic 1. And so there's not as many programs for the ALS or the paramedics as there are fire departments. There's, at one point, that slide I was showing you, there's 40 plus fire departments around the county, but there's only there's only 5 ALS programs around the county. It gets a little complicated. Does that make sense? It's part of a tiered response. We, the reason why we have those 3 units, they're specialized units, they're advanced, they're higher level units. They don't go out on every EMS call, emergency medical service call, medical call. They only go out on the calls that are where people are really hurt or really sick. And so that's why we have much more units in service and fire stations to go out on all the regular calls, the not as critical calls. And then if it is a critical call, then the paramedic unit also responds. So a lot of times we'll get questions, Michelle gets them all the time. I was having trouble breathing, or I was having chest pain or something like that. And all of a sudden an aid car showed up, an engine showed up, this other aid car showed up, which was a medic unit, an ambulance showed up, this guy in a Suburban showed up. And and you've got, all of a sudden you got 6 units showing up. And that's it's called a tiered response, and it escalates on the severity of the call. So if it's just a regular, I've hurt my finger, or I possibly broke my arm or something like that, you're just going to get an aid car, or maybe a fire engine if it's closer, and the aid car is out of service, or someplace else, but you're going to get 1 unit. But if you're having a heart attack, or if you're having a structure fire, or if you're having some of those kinds of calls, you're going to get lots of units. because we escalate to those specialty units. And that's what's called a tiered response. Does that make sense? That was usually a pretty good stumper. Any questions? Okay. So let's see. So these are the different units, as I mentioned. I was going to talk about the medic units. So our medic units, we have, well, you'll see up here on the suppression side, B161. We're not playing bingo. Sorry. That's a stand for our battalion chief. Okay. On the medical side, we all have what's called MSOs, medical service officers. They run around in a Suburban or an SUV of some sort. And actually we're switching to trucks now with canopies, but they run around and manage the medic units, the 3 medic units that we have. Again, one in Shoreline, one in Lake Forest Park, and one in Bothell. And so they are the command and control for the medic units, those 2 divisions that I was showing you in the org chart. And so, so we have 7 ALS personnel on minimum of 7 ALS personnel on duty also at the same time. So the 7 with the 26, that's where I was getting the 33. Still okay? Okay. So where are our calls? So we have most of our calls are in Shoreline. We are a busy fire department. Some of our units are going, at one point, we had an 8 car that was running almost 10 calls a day. And that may not sound like much to some people, but when you start thinking about, we also transport our patients to the hospital, which is an improved level of service. We really like to have the continuity of care of going to somebody and treating them and taking them and putting them into our 8 car and taking them to the hospital. And that continuity of care, I think, is a really important level of service that we provide. But doing that can take a unit out of service for anywhere from a minimum of 45 minutes, but it can be right now, sometimes the hospital wait times are pretty significant, and it can be a couple hours. So when we talk about 10 calls, that's an average probably of about 10 hours, of out of service time. And so that's almost half the shift, half the 24-hour shift. So we've been working to try and improve on that. And so now we have 8 cars at pretty much every station, 24. There's only one station in Lake Forest Park that's only got an 8 car during the peak hour during the day. All of our other stations have an 8 car. 80 to 85% of what we do is EMS. Everybody sees the big red fire engine. In fact, it just went by just a little bit ago. And they think, oh, we're fighting fires. We're fighting, we do have fires. We actually have quite a few calls here in Shoreline. We had, before the contract with North Shore, we were doing about, I think it was around 9,500 calls in the city of Shoreline. We're now going to be pushing about 16, maybe 17,000 calls, including the medic units for 2023. We'll see how we end up here, but so our units are busy, and that's why we have multiple units working out of each station. We have 5 stations, but you saw all the different rigs that we put into service. And that's to make sure that we can respond when you call 911, and hopefully with the most appropriate rig. If it's an 8 call, we're responding with an 8 car. If it's a structure fire or a car wreck or something like that, then we're responding with the engine or the truck. We only have 1 ladder truck, and that's over in North City right now. But we have engines and 8 cars, at all of the other stations, along with an 8 car with the truck as well. So does that make sense? Okay, so most of our calls are in the Shoreline area, but you can see the spread out, there. I also have a couple more slides to show you more critical calls, such as where our structure fires are. The heat map on the right is actually a little bit better for trying to see, where the concentrations of the calls are. And then for ALS, the Advanced Life Service. So you can see again, along some of our more developed areas where the call concentrations are. And then again, over in Kenmore. And again, our medic units respond all the way to out here and down here. So, so you can see the different calls and the concentrations. Any questions on that? Okay. There's my contact information. You know, I'm going to pass this off to Michelle to talk about too. But before I do, one of the things that I wanted to share with you, which was really good news, is that we worked really hard to get our WSRB, which stands for, see, Washington State Rating Bureau. See, I caught myself. Yeah, so we worked really hard with the WSRB, which is an independent organization that evaluates the performance of fire departments around the state. And it's partly, supported by insurance companies. So the insurance companies understand the risk. If you want to go get a policy here in Shoreline, what's your WSRB rating so that we can assess, what that cost is going to be. So I'm really proud to say, and this is good news for you all as well, is that it's anywhere from a 1 to a 10, 10 being the worst, like almost zero coverage. And we were a 3, but we dropped to a 2, which is the top 2% of all the fire departments in the state. And that's really exciting for us. It's a testimonial to what we've been trying to do for years, decades. And there's only one class 1, fire department in the entire state. And they just dropped to it earlier this year. And that was Seattle. So Seattle was a 2. And and so there's only 15 fire departments in the whole state that are class 2. So I was really excited about that. And you should be too. You should talk with your insurance agents about what that might mean. Doesn't mean that everybody might get savings. It really depends on your carrier and so forth. Especially if you own a business though, commercial carriers really look at the WSRB and adjust your insurance rates accordingly. So we're proud of that, but contact your insurance company. All right, we're gonna get questions and all that at the end, but I'd like to pass this off to Michelle to talk about our outreach.
So, congratulations.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
That's a big freaking deal. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, you all worked really hard to get that.
Well, our chief definitely is, this has been a big push. He understands all the numbers and everything else that the rest of us don't have to. So we appreciate that as well. So that all of his education was definitely utilized, even physics, I'm sure. Alrighty, so my name is Michelle Pittock. I have been a Shoreline firefighter here for 20 years, come October 13th. So very soon it'll be 20. And I've been doing the education piece and the information piece for the last, 7 years, maybe, is it? Sheesh, okay, time flies. And so the things that we try to offer here for the community, obviously things that, well, hello. Oh, geez, sorry. So the things we want to offer though is trying to make sure we can do every education piece possible to help our community out. So what I was doing prior was I was actually teaching a CPR class in Kenmore right before this and sprinted over here. So we teach CPR classes for free for those people that don't need an American Heart Association card. We just want people educated, and not just educated, but willing to get involved. And since we've started doing that, the response has been fabulous. We have so many people coming strictly for the sake of wanting to know how to help their family, how to help their neighbors, how to be a part of that outreach for us. So that's pretty fabulous. We also started teaching more first aid. We also want to start going the Stop the Bleed route. We haven't picked that up quite yet. We're working on getting more and more instructors involved. The more we have hired, it's fabulous. We have a lot more people that are pretty excited to get involved of the education piece, which is really nice from my standpoint. So we do also teach a lot of fire and life safety outreach classes as well. This covers all of our growth in Shoreline for all of the apartment complexes going in. Any type of shared living is trying to educate to let them know that their safety is affecting obviously their neighbors, everyone that they share a wall and a ceiling and a floor with. So trying to get to all of the new construction as well as the older construction, any shared living with condominiums, King County Housing. There's a lot of variety. So try to work in those systems to talk about different things to help them. Everything from, preventing the cooking fires, knowing that still the kitchen fires are still our biggest source. So educating in that, trying to work with King County as far as all the different languages spoken, to making sure we're tackling not just our standard way of doing things, but tackling all the different languages as well, whether it be through QR codes that they can scan to get that information into their language, as well as having translators in some of the classes that I've spoke to as well. So that's a nice change we're doing. Schools, of course, is a big one. We have 18 schools in Shoreline, including the private schools and, some of our other sectors. We also have 3 in Lake Forest Park now that we're working with, and 6 in Kenmore. And so what that entails with the schools is we teach hands-only CPR to every student before they graduate from high school. That is the law. And so we work on that. The nice thing is some of our middle schools also request us as well. So they get it more than once. So that'll be hands only, choking, and then really trying to get everyone comfortable with defibrillators and educating them the importance of that age group having defibrillators and being comfortable knowing how easy they are to use and just getting their confidence up, because it's always a scary thing when you hear people talking about shocking someone, right? So being able to educate in that is fabulous. We also work a lot with senior housing and going over not just the fire side, but also more of our EMS, the emergency medical services side, and what happens when they call 911 and when should they call and what should they do about medications. And there's a huge long list, right? And so trying to make sure people are comfortable and competent staying in their homes longer and what they can do to help in that contribution. We also have veterans housing here, so we work with them as well. Again, with the transitional housing. And we also try to do a lot with neighborhood associations. Thank you. Whenever we have that opportunity, we like to have that request made. So anytime there is a ice cream social, which is not ice cream social anymore, but going to the different events. I love doing that. Obviously, I signed up to be a firefighter, but went this route. And being able to interact with the little ones obviously is super exciting because they love us. So who wouldn't love that? But being able to educate the parents as well and really trying to work on when we have these events, it's not just get to see this cool red engine, but when the kids are waiting, I get the undivided attention of the parents, especially if especially if our cadets are there helping, and they're fabulous. And that's our cadet program is a whole nother thing, but that's age 16 to 21. So they come to our events so they can do the dog and pony show in the engine. And then I get to talk to the parents about window falls, preventing window falls, sleeping with their doors closed. It's called, close before you doze. There's a lot of different educational pieces that every time I get another parent going through, they're like, oh, I never thought about that. So it's a great opportunity for us to try to keep our future generations safe and educating the families. As far as the community events, the city, I
Go ahead.
apologize.
We do have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Actually,
Please
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
No, this just popped up. With all of the new family, and both of you can tag team on
Yes,
this one.
please.
With all of the new multi-story development and growth in Shoreline, what impacts do you see on the department? Equipment needs, like, for example, additional ladder truck for building heights, capacity overall, and impacts to response time? Related, can you comment on fire safety codes for all of the new buildings, as well as impacts on infrastructure, additional hydrants and water supply for firefighting in the future in Shoreline? So that's a very layered
I was gonna say,
question.
yes, yeah, please let me know if I missed any pieces of this. I was actually gonna mention this right before we got to the Q&A session. Obviously, we have a lot of growth going on around the city. You know, you can see it with right behind our headquarters now is a crane that's going in that's building another multifamily. This is something that we look strategically at, looking to the not only the short but the long term impacts that are going to occur. And I'm really happy and thankful to the city for supporting our impact fee program. And the fire, it's called the Fire Impact Fee Program. It's similar to other impact fees that that cities can put into place, such as parks or schools or roads, you know, things of that nature. I went what was it, like 7 years, six years ago. I don't know that off the top of my head. I probably should. But about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 7, we started putting we put an impact fee program into place, had and worked with the city, had the support of the city. So thanks to the city again on this. And what that does is that anybody that wants to put a new development into the city of Shoreline needs to pay a fee to address the impacts of this new development on the infrastructure that all of our taxpayers and residents have been paying for years or decades. And so we use those fees, and they have to be used very specifically for capital projects to mitigate the impacts of new development. And so, for example, we used some of those funds to help build the new fire station in North City, which was about an $11.6 million project, total. Now it'd probably be $20 million, but we used the impact fees to help mitigate that because we had a bunch of growth going on the city, and especially with the light rail developments and the stations and the developments going on around there. We needed to prepare for the long term in that area, and our old station was inadequate even in the current standards, and certainly was not going to make it, into the future. We've also continued to collect impact fees, and I'm happy to say that we were able to use those fees this last fall to purchase a new ladder truck. Our ladder truck is actually not that old. But with all the growth going on, and sometimes things break, or if there's preventative maintenance that we need to do, and that ladder truck is out of service, it is our only ladder truck because it's a very expensive apparatus. I'm glad you're all sitting down. $2.3 million. It's gone up. It has gone up $1 million in 5 years. It used to be a $1.3 million rig, and now it's a $2.3 million rig. So we purchased that with impact fees. Didn't impact any of the taxes or any of the revenues that we get from any of our taxpayers and residents and so forth. We use the impact fees from that program to pay for that ladder truck. Unfortunately, it's also, at the time, it was a 28-month build. So now we're still probably 1.5 years from seeing it, which is a little frustrating, but it is coming, and it's the way the market is in the industry right now. Everything is super delayed. So we are reinvesting in the infrastructure and trying to minimize, any of the impacts that we can on our current, taxpayers and residents. And so, as far as the codes go for the new buildings, the new buildings are completely, we have an active fire marshal office. They work with the city and the planning and building department, and they're up to code. They're completely up to code. And it's some of the new stuff. They've got controls to control where smoke goes and where air goes and all it. It's pretty crazy. But it's really also very cool to see these preventative measures that are going into place, because for us, we really don't want to have that 911 call and have something tragic happening. If we can prevent the severity of that call, or even the call entirely, that's what our fire marshal's office is there for, to be proactive and preventative. That's why we have the fire alarm systems. That's why we have sprinklers. That's, all of those things help save lives. That's what we're here for. And so all of the buildings are completely up to code. Our fire marshal's office is very active in doing the pre-construction review, working with the developers through the construction, the after construction, making sure that it's compliant. And then we're out there actively annually doing inspections and walkthroughs to make sure that we're noticing anything that we can try to, mitigate, whether through operations or through code enforcement. There was a question about hydrants, I think. We are very well hydranted around the city. But again, we also do annual inspections of the SPU hydrants. North City has their own hydrant program. They do a great job. So, our hydrants are in great shape. We have good water systems. Was there what else? Did I hit
I think you
most of it?
Yeah.
So I would finish with, we have a lot of taller structures that are coming in, those multifamilies, and that's a little scary because they're taller. But at the same time, they have those systems that I was just mentioning in place to make them much, much safer buildings. And that is one of the reasons why we got the ladder truck, to make sure that we have one in service. But believe it or not, our ladder truck is what's called a 105-footer, but it doesn't reach 105 feet. Once you extend the ladder out and bring it down, you're lucky to get 5-6 stories, and so that's one of the reasons why we're being proactive in trying to plan for the future and using those impact fees to plan for that.
Thank you. Alrighty, so something else, just talking about schools, is we also teach a distracted driving class as well. So that's another avenue. As well as, we start everything from preschool on up. So we try to tackle different things, per age group. Something else you saw on our map is Station 62, which is down in Richmond Beach, and that is our Children's Fire Safety Center. And it is pretty darn amazing. We have our old fire pole down there that the kids get to slide down. They get to put on the gear. We have our old Kenworth down there that we take around on Christmas, as well as for our egg hunt. We also store our UTV down there. That is a great access point where we can utilize it for down at the beach, whether there's fires, whether there's brush fires or whether there's injuries down the beach. It makes it much more accessible. We also have our Sea-Doo down that we station down there, as well as we have a snowplow attachment. So we have a lot of different things we're able to utilize, but our big thing is being able to educate kids away from the busier stations. So that way we can educate without worrying about fire calls going out and the kids running through the stations. So it still gives them a great opportunity to learn down there. So part of the thing of having an educator as a firefighter, I'm also an engine driver. So I do bring the engine without trying to bring the crews, because we are so busy with our call volume. It allows me to go without them so they can handle calls, and they can also handle all of the training to make sure that they're 110% ready. So going to the kindergarten, going to, first grade, second grade on up, it doesn't matter. They still like to see big red. So that's kind of neat. So I get to educate first, and then I get to take them through the engine to educate them in that realm. Another thing we offer to our community is car seat checks. We had a lot of COVID babies. I did over 100 car seats in 1 year. It was a little crazy. So now we have 2 more car seat technicians. So we can make sure that everyone is able to have their kiddos safe. And other things that we do safety fairs. DO Department of Transportation has us come to theirs. There's others. Krista has us come to theirs. There's a lot of different larger organizations that invite us. And then we also have a smoke alarm program. So we don't have a grant for it, but we make sure on all of our rigs that we carry 2 smoke alarms and 1 CO alarm. And that's to make sure that if we're in someone's home, it may be the only time someone outside of the people that live there have any access. So when we're on these calls, if it's not, a structure fire, something where it's an aid call or something else, we try to have our crews test alarms And if possible, replace alarms. If they're over 10 years old, we want them to toss it completely. The newer alarms we try to have the 10-year battery, so we can keep the older adult population off of ladders and hopefully keep more people safe, because that is the biggest issue still when we go on these structure fires, is no working smoke alarms. So we really try to make sure that we can help, support our community to test those and educate them to why and how we can change those things. I know there's more, but this was my quick little throw together. Any questions as far as education is concerned? Okay, something else I also work on is our social media. I am 51, so I might be technologically challenged, so my apologies for that. But we do try to make sure that we're on the Nextdoor app, so that covers all of our community for those that don't like the normal social media. So Nextdoor, as well as Facebook. It's not called Twitter anymore, X. And we try to do Instagram as well. So some variety of things, but I'm always accessible. So if there's ever any question, also being a Shoreline resident like I was for 20 plus years, I'm still part of a lot of the Facebook groups. So I try to make sure I'm always scanning those. If there's some type of incident and someone has a question, I try to respond that way. But any of our residents can always message us, whether it's email or whether it's social media, and I try to get back to them as quick as possible to answer those things. Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm wondering if you offer anything in regards to fall prevention education or have outreach services
Great question.
to prevent repeat callers.
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So we do work with the senior center and we work with King County. So we actually have a grant for fall prevention. And so there is an instructor at the senior center that teaches fall prevention classes that we actually get the grant for and pay that instructor. So that is a fabulous program and they've had some really great results. But we also have a fall prevention specialist with King County. One person has retired, so they were working on the replacement. So we can refer, because then they can have access to materials as well, not just us coming to help pick them up once again, which we're fine with, but able to work on the grab bars and other things. We do have an amazing program in place that's called MIH. It's our Mobile Integrated Health Team. And that is actually staffed with 2 social workers as well as a firefighter. They are rock stars. I can tell you when you're talking about repeat callers, and it doesn't have to be just for falls, but if we have that, we refer. All of the firefighters, when they go on calls, if there is a question of whether it's a failure to thrive, someone can't take care of themselves very well on their own anymore, whether it's a mental, emotional type situation, whether it is, a fall prevention, all these things when they go to put all that information in, they do a check mark in this box for MIH to contact those individuals. And they will call them, they will go to their house, they will do what they can to reach out and try to alleviate their situation and get them assistance. It's been everything from they may have to go pick up meds for them. They may take them to a doctor's appointment. I mean, they go above and beyond when they can. The problem is there's 3 of them and it's a big community. So, but they are truly amazing. They have helped set up programs at Northwest Hospital and Harborview, and they've done a lot prior to becoming Shoreline employees. So that's another really nice service we're able to offer. Yes, it is outstanding. Thank you.
And we're adding a 4th person in 2024 to improve the service.
Because they are busy, but they alleviate so much of what we do. So if we have a call that we're on that doesn't need necessarily EMS, we can call them from the call. They can come take over. So that rig is available for another emergency. So.
I have a question here that's about Stop the Bleed. The person asking it says that they're surprised that Stop the Bleed now includes tourniquets. they thought that that had fallen out of favor, use in favor of applying direct pressure to the blade.
Good question.
Can't tourniquets create their own problems?
Good question. So, really with the Boston Marathon bombings, that kind of got everyone's attention back on tourniquets, right? It wasn't just the more of the military side any longer. So we actually, following things like that, we actually carry trauma bags that have 5 tourniquets as well as different types of dressings for those scenarios. In the past, they would think that a tourniquet was definitely going to make that person lose their limb, right? And that the more studies have shown that's not the case. We still do record the time we put it on, and the doctors still want to know that, but that time frame has grown enormously where they're able to still keep that limb even utilizing tourniquets. So that's why it's so important to have the education piece and not just, putting it out there that tourniquets should be utilized, but having that education piece, talking about direct pressure, of course, but knowing the difference on when you want to utilize a tourniquet as opposed to just the direct pressure. So that's why we do talk about this in our first aid classes that we teach. But as far as going further into the stop the bleed, like I said, that's more of a separate, because it's a little more specific in what we teach. But good question. Did that answer?
I think so. Person who asked that, if you want to follow up, if you've got a further question, please do. But I think she said, thank you.
Okay, you're very
So,
welcome.
good job.
That information was accurate a while back, but as more studies come out and we're always looking to improve. King County is a leading county in the world, in many areas, cardiac arrest, especially our stroke CVA protocols, and things of that nature. And so as more information comes out, that's why you see some of those changes. So that information was accurate a while back, with tourniquets being, questionable, but that's not the case nowadays. I did want to circle back, and maybe this will prompt some more questions and with some final thoughts too about what the future brings. And I mentioned that we have a contract for services with the the Legacy North Shore Fire Department that started June 1st of last year. This is something that has led to improved levels of service and more efficiencies, and it is the way of the future. King County has been, in my opinion, very slow to this, these improvements that can occur. You look at other counties around us, other states, they are far more aggressive in those consolidations and that regionalization because, at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we're doing the best level of service that we can and being the most fiscally responsible that we can, because dollars only stretch so far. And so, like, for example, with the North Shore Fire Department, don't have to have 2 fire chiefs. We don't have to have 2 deputy chiefs. We don't have, so you get those efficiencies and you can reinvest that money in savings to the taxpayers and it can be a combination of both, to the improved levels of service. So we're always actively looking for that. And that is the way that is now King County is starting to look at that. You're seeing a lot in South King County, even us working now with the North Shore Fire Department. The North Shore Fire Department still exists. So you don't get all of the efficiencies, but you get a lot of them. And so we are continuing to work on that. There is some more movement that's potentially going to happen. Bothell is in the process right now of evaluating what their future looks like. But what you're finding is that the smaller fire departments of 2, 3, 4 station fire departments, they're looking to get with bigger fire departments. And I'm sharing this with you because don't be afraid of this. This is, if we're doing this, it's intentional for the right reasons. And I will absolutely guarantee you that my goal whenever looking at these things is maintaining or improving levels of service. If we can get some savings too, some financial savings, great. But I am not interested at all in decreasing our level of service that we provide. We provide a high level of service, and I think that's what you all deserve. And so I just wanted to share that with you because there is still some movement going on, around the county, and even Snohomish County, Pierce County, Kittitas, Kitsap, there. Everybody's looking at this because that is the way that we can, continue to be sustainable into the future. Is there any other questions?
We do have one. Thank you. This is kind of a follow-up about CPR. are breaths still given? Or is it all about compressions? And then, Michelle, I think that's for you. And
Sure.
then for the chief, you use the expression contract with other fire departments. Are the smaller stations contract departments, or is it a contract of shared services?
Why don't you?
Do you want to do that first and then?
So the question is it a contract with the stations, or can you say that again, please?
Yes, you use the expression contract with other fire departments. Are the smaller stations contract departments, or is it a contract of shared services? No.
Okay, well, let me hopefully try and answer this. I've mentioned contract, and there's different levels that we can get efficiencies and regionalization. And one of the easiest ones is a contract. It's a contract. It's called an ILA, interlocal agreement. But it's essentially just a contract. And so the North Shore, for example, I'm going to use North Shore again. North Shore Fire Department still exists. They contract with Shoreline to provide all services, operations, administrative, everything. All of the employees that were previous legacy North Shore Fire Department employees became Shoreline Fire employees. However, the North Shore Fire Department still exists. It has taxing authority. It has a board of commissioners and a part-time board secretary. And so I report to that board. And if you recall the organizational chart, I report to both boards. And so it gets a little bit more complicated, but a contract or an ILA is one of the easiest ways to start down this road. Typically, when you're looking for full efficiencies, you're looking for mergers or annexations or an RFA, which stands for Regional Fire Authority, or things of that nature. You might have seen that because there's been studies around, in doing that. And so that is a more permanent, longer term, better efficiencies, but it's more complicated. And almost all of those require a vote of the people. So this contract for services, for lack of a better analogy, I suppose it's kind of like dating before you get married. So you're checking to see that the relationship is working, that it's everything that you expected it to be. And then, typically you go across the finish line and get married. And some of these ILAs end up being long-term, and continue. But I also think that it's a great way to get to, that higher level of efficiencies, and so forth. And I can talk about this for about the next 3.5 hours, but about the different pros and cons of the different regionalizations. And I'm not sure if I'm answering the question entirely, but the smaller departments, when we're talking about, especially when you're talking about 2, 3, 4 station departments, it's just not as efficient as being in a larger department. Larger isn't always better. We're not going to, I can't say this for sure, I suppose, but I would be very, 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 very unlikely and surprised if we were to merge with Seattle. Okay, but when we look at what we can do at a local level and geographically with our partners, especially that are nearby, as long as we're keeping that goal of level of service, a lot of these things look, it is the right way to go and a common sense approach. But sometimes there's barriers with different, and I'm not going to get into all the different barriers, but there's different challenges in doing it, and some of them are small and some of them are a little bit more challenging, but it's at a department level, not station level. And so I don't know if there was maybe a misunderstanding of what.
No, I think you've answered it.
Okay.
She thanked you.
Okay, sure.
Perfect. And in regards to CPR, so we teach a lot of hands-only CPR. So the studies have shown very similar by doing hands-only as opposed to giving breaths for the general public. Now, when we're talking for us, when we go on cardiac arrests, we're still doing ventilations. But it has been found out that we, as a whole, the medical community has probably overventilated. And so we are doing less volume with our ventilations, but we are still doing it. So, but with the public, again, this is not talking for healthcare workers or other individuals that are in the profession. There has been a greater push from doing hands only. Something that the dispatchers always ask is when you call 911, are they breathing normally? So they're trying to also find out if they have what's called agonal respirations. And that is taking a random breath that doesn't have any type of rhythm to it. They're still getting in that oxygen within that. And that's more on the adult level, not talking necessarily with the infants or child. So that has shown to have still very good success numbers by doing just the hands only. So we do teach both, but it has definitely been more successful and more people have been willing to get involved out of all the classes that we teach, stating if they didn't have to do mouth to mouth, which us as firefighters don't do. We always use a bag valve mask. But by being able to do hands only, they're acting as their heart, which is going to be most important. And hopefully that answers their question. And I do welcome anyone, if they would like to come take a class, please do. I think I'm a pretty decent instructor and we have a pretty good response. And then our first aid classes include trauma, but also medical. So it's not just the idea of a trauma. We cover quite a large variety that, again, anyone could come for free.
Any other questions?
So at Celebrate Shoreline, I was working at the Shoreline Emergency Management table. And I had two people come up to me with adult children or adults on ventilators. And they wanted to know what was available to them to mitigate some of the emergencies that would come up with somebody with a ventilator.
Great.
And I told them both to go talk to the fire department because I had no idea what the right answer to that was.
Right.
And one of the scenarios was in a large emergency or a disaster, no electricity, and they may not have a battery backup or a generator. Where would they go to plug in?
Right. That's a hard thing. So we know that if we were to have, say, the big one, right? We were going to have the earthquake. What are we going to do? And so that's why so many of our neighborhood groups and search groups, talking about relying on neighbors as opposed to we will be going around to the community to find out, can we use this road? We do a windshield survey. So we'll be driving around to see what access we have. Do we need to set up a hospital? Different things like that. But if it's just in general, we like to know who is more medically challenged. And that's something where we can contact, if they contact us, we can set it up through our dispatch. So anytime we have a special case, whether it's a child, that's on event, whether they have, their heart their blood getting pumped outside of there's so many different scenarios. We want to know those things, and that gets added to our run card. So if we have a call to that house right away, it populates on our screen. This individual lives at this house. And that way we're a little more prepared going in how we're going to help already.
Is there an outreach to those families with children or adults with disabilities? Is there an outreach program so you can
Right. That's not something that comes from us. Typically we get that information because the hospital, those individuals' doctors, right? There's a connection that we get emails sent to us, stating, hey, this individual has moved into this neighborhood, or there's different things there.
Coming from the medical community.
The caregivers.
Giving you the information about there's somebody living in this particular house that kind of ventilated.
Or they'll encourage them to
or they'll encourage, or the caregivers or the doctors, they'll encourage them to reach out to us. And then we have one of our lieutenants He is the one that makes that connection with our dispatchers to make sure the run card has those things included. We're not going out seeking that. It's more people that unfortunately we don't have the wherewithal to find out all that information. So it's them reaching out to us. So we can have that.
Added into the premise history.
Yeah, into our run cards.
Into our computer screen that we use in the apparatus. And a lot of information can be added in there. Sorry. A lot of information can be added into that premise history, such as special medical needs or passcodes to access the house or structure or go around to the back or, things of those natures. And it's also a way for us to get more information that we normally wouldn't get when we're en route, so that it makes us better prepared. And to answer your question too, if you ever get into a situation where you have no power and you have a ventilator, you can call 911 and we will come out and we'll try and figure out what we need to do. And sometimes we've even left, generators, with them. We don't have a lot of generators, but, if worse came to worse, we would bring them back to the station and figure out something there where we have power, or to a community center or emergency center or whatever it is, field hospital, if it was really bad, things of that nature. You may recall when we were doing the COVID, they set up a field hospital over at the community center that didn't ever get really used, or for very many people at least. But there is that options that we have, in a major disaster or a long-term, power outage and things like that. I mean, most of our disasters we could get the big one, but you can almost plan every year that we're going to have some kind of major wind, ice, snowstorm. And that can, if that knocks power out for days, and other people, even if you're not on a ventilator, sometimes people are using supplemental oxygen at a very low flow through a nasal cannula or something like that. And and they run out of oxygen. How do they get more oxygen? So we've also dropped off bottles and things of that nature as well.
Something online here. Would you talk a little bit about the fire prevention safety tips on your website, or other fire prevention tip resources for residents, especially with use of furnaces, heaters, indoor cooking, etc., especially this time of year?
So we do have the tips on there. We try to have them, they're pretty generic, right? But very applicable. So are they asking for more resources, or
I think just
specific to what we
kind of-
have?
My guess is probably just to let people know that those are
Okay.
resources.
Perfect.
And that
Absolutely.
if you are invited to go to a group to talk,
Yes.
that's something you can talk about specifically.
Definitely. Yeah, we do try to, if you can, you can check out our website. It does have a lot of different resources, but that is something, when I do go to the different facilities, the different adult family homes, or if we go to multifamily, I try to make it specific to the time of year. So definitely going into the months right now, we talk about space heaters. We talk about if they have the wall heat, as far as clearances. I even try to talk about, utilizing the electric blankets and making sure those have been updated. Great ideas for Christmas presents, ones that have automatic shut off instead of the older ones. We try to discuss all those, every avenue we can think of going into which season is affected for safety.
Another big one is if you have a wood burning stove or fireplace and you clean out your ashes and you're disposing them, do not put them in a cardboard box on your cedar deck right next to your cedar siding outside, or your yard waste. I have to say this because I can tell you in my career, I have been on dozens of fires that have started that way. Even if it feels somewhat cool to the touch, they still have heat. Please dispose of them properly. Metal container away from the house, away from anything that's going to burn, and clean out your dryer vents too.
And I have a question. The Shoreline Police have talked about the RACER program and being able to be prepared when they get to a call that may be a behavioral health call. A few years ago, we had a neighbor who had some really serious issues and everybody showed up, including fire. Is there crossover there? Do you all compare notes and share information?
Not, we're doing much better now than we have in the past. The RACER program is newer.
Mhm.
Michelle has already mentioned our mobile integrated health, our MIH program. Both of these are stopgaps. They're helping get people to the right care and at the right level without escalating. On the RACER side, not escalating the call to something that is more severe and keeping people in out of crisis and getting them the help they need. The MIH is a referral program and it's focusing more on the EMS side. And now you may have heard that there's a new crisis center that's going to be started up in North Kirkland near Evergreen Hospital, or I think spring of next year. It's coming up this next year, which is, again, for me, I remember back when dinosaurs roamed the earth and I was riding on an apparatus, we would, if somebody that was in crisis or something like that, we would give them a card and say, please call this number on Monday, and see if you can get help, knowing that this was a huge gap in the level of service that was being provided, that maybe 1 out of 10 was going to get connected with a social worker or where they needed to get help. And where we've come from is such a huge step from there. We're not all the way there, but we have filled gaps and we are providing higher levels of services. And it's partly the RACER, it's partly program, it's partly the MIH, it's partly these crisis centers and so forth, and trying getting people connected with the help that they need for the people that want that help, especially.
Thank you.
I'm pretty excited about it too, because I'm on the governing board for the crisis center. So
boy, the time has come for sure. Thank you both. I don't have any more questions here unless anybody else does out there. I think that we can call this a wrap.
Any other questions? One final moment I was going to say was that we are, Michelle had mentioned our CDUs and so forth. We are an all services fire department. We do house calls too. You can call 911, we will come. But we have a wildland program. We have our rescue program. Our swimmer rescue program. We have high angle, low angle rescue. We're confined space. Our ALS program. We are an all services program or fire department. And so if you have a question about any of our programs, or if you need any further assistance or whatever, please contact, you can contact Michelle, myself, the website, or, through our website, or even just call our main line and tell us what you're needing or what you're asking for. And we are here. We are public servants. We are here to serve you. And I think that we all take that very, very seriously. And that's why we're here. So thank you so much for all your time and some of these great questions. And as I shared with you before, I really love these things. So if you have an organization that you'd like to have one of us come talk, we're typically the people that come out and talk. If it's PTA or if it's a homeowners association or whatever, please don't hesitate to reach out. And if we can get it scheduled, we will. I don't know, did you? No. All right. Thank you very much.
We got thank yous online too.